Rosh Hashiva, besides being one of the great idealists of the world, the Rosh Hashiva is a very serious man. And he decided to take us to the biggest graveyard in the world. Poland is the biggest graveyard in the world. And he says to us, let's get serious. Let's take you to a place where you can meet death directly in the most horrible, horrific, unthinkable conditions and see what it's about. And that will make you take your life more seriously. And that will make you tell other people to take life seriously. And when you do that, that's how you're going to change people and change the world.
Rabbi Weinberg brought us here in order to activate us. He brought us here to think about it. He brought us here to plan. He brought us here to be more effective. He brought us here to get us to become a little more real about the situation of the Jewish people. He brought us here to draw parallels of pre-war period when perhaps there was a lot to be done to save the Jews, comparing that to the current situation, specifically with the assimilation of the Jews. He brought us here to renew our resolve to save the Jewish people.
Never in my life, since I knew what was going on here, I never thought that I'd ever visit this place, this cursed place. Why'd we come here? Why'd I bring and ask all the fellows to come, all of our rabbis to come? To wake us up. The time is drawing closer. We are losing more neshamas every day than we're gaining. We're in trouble. We gotta wake up.
Hitler's the guy who writes it already in 1920. 1,000-year plan that will save the world. Kill the Jews, to rid the world of the Jews, and then finally to get rid of the Slavs. And so the ghetto themselves is a way of getting them together to get towards the final solution. So if you left here and went to Treblinka, your life expectancy was 4.5 hours. That's it. 4.5 hours, sometimes it took longer, but 4.5 hours you were dead. The Nazi numbers in their document that they wrote says all 590,000 Jews of Warsaw need to go into the ghetto. Now, look at the map. You can see there are many, many roads around the ghetto itself. We are over 1/3 of Warsaw's population at the time of the ghetto, and we are put into 2.8% of the city. Try to picture 1/3 of the largest city's population moving through the streets in an endless stream, pushing, wheeling, dragging all their belongings from every part of the city to one small section, crowding one another more and more as they converged. No cars, no horses, no help of any sort were available to us by order of the occupying authorities. Pushcarts were only our method of conveyance that we had, and these were piled high with household goods, furnishing much amusement to the German onlookers, who delighted in overturning the carts and seeing us scrambling for our effects. Children wandered, lost and crying. Parents ran here and there seeking them, their cries drowned out in the tremendous hubbub of 500,000 people, uprooted people.
Rabbi Weinberg has always been teaching us that today's situation is not dissimilar to the years prior to the Holocaust, when there was a serious threat facing the Jewish people.
The whole mission of the Rosh Hashiva is to make people real that there's a spiritual Holocaust going on. And the more that people can be real with that, the more we can do to solve that issue, to bring people to the Jewish people back home, to be Mekadesh Shem Shemayim, to have a Kiddush Hashem. I just walked out of this building here in Auschwitz, and they said on a good day, 24,000 people were murdered. That was a day that was productive. We're losing thousands of people every day to the Jewish people. Just disappearing. all of our families are being affected.
When there were so many people who died in the concentration camps, literally giving up their lives to be able to keep the mitzvahs, there were those who starved to death prematurely because they were non-kosher. There were those who suffered terrible beatings and died as a result of that because they refused to work on Yom Kippur. There are those in the camps who gave up their lives to light a Hanukkah candle, which is not even a Torah mitzvah. So, and when you look around and you see we have all this freedom to do this, the tragedy is glaring. The tragedy is huge. The tragedy is magnified.
When one considers that spiritual life is eternal, physical life is a 70, 80-year process. It's the short little chunk. It's the little opportunity. It's the pros door, Olam Haba. And if somebody misses out on that, he's missing out on eternity. That's a spiritual holocaust.
We're fighting to save the Jewish people, and we're going to win.
I get involved, you know. I was a yeshiva kid, a cheder kid. Yeah? I learned in yeshiva all my life. I learned in Chaim Berlin. My father died when I was 15. I learned in the Yisrael. Yeah? I never would have seen any of these people. Yeah? I wouldn't have known what was going on. But when my father died when I was 15, so in the summers I used to work. So the one job that you could get money was you were a salesman. You sold piece goods, you went to department stores, to manufacturers. You sold, they gave you a commission, you could make money. Yeah? So I went to, in those days Philadelphia was the boondocks, yeah? But I went further, I went to Toronto, to Montreal. That's really out. I went to Chicago, I went to Miami, you know, I traveled to Texas. I remember I went to Texas, yeah? The Jewish people, they were spread all over, yeah? The Jewish people gave me a warm welcome. They liked the idea of a yeshiva bocher, just making a living, you know, a young guy. They did everything to help me. And we got acquainted. And I turned to Judaism, you know, and they were all very proud of being Jewish. Very proud. Every one of them was proud of being Jewish, yeah? And they liked the yeshiva bocher, yeah? So I would ask them, what are you proud of? You know, I tried to understand them. What are you proud of? What do you think a Jew is, yeah? And they were abysmally ignorant. And it seemed obvious to me, I was a kid, but it seemed obvious to me that they're not going to be able to teach their children and what they're proud of, that they don't know what it is. How are they going to teach their children? They're not going to be able to transfer it, yeah? So, what do? Yeah? As a kid, you know, you don't look at yourself as the responsible party. At least I didn't, yeah? So I would talk to Rosh Yeshiva, I'd talk to the rabbis, I'd talk to anybody that listened. You know, assimilation is coming, we got to do something, we got to do something, we got to do something. It wasn't until I was 30 years old, yeah, and nothing was getting done, even though I had made efforts, yeah? I had made efforts to organize, but until I was 30 years old when I realized, you know, in Pirkei Avos it says, look around, nobody's doing the job, make the effort. Yeah? That's when I decided, I can't count on anybody else, I have to try.
That's the Rosh Yeshiva. He believes in people. He believes everybody is created b'tselem Elokim. Hashem, the Almighty God, is infinite. He's real with everything, Rosh Yeshiva. And one of the realities is if you're created b'tselem Elokim, as long as you understand that and you understand it's not you, then there's nothing that stands in your way. You can do anything. So if every Jew walked around as a proud, upright Jew, understanding what our mission is in this world, our mission as Jews, as part of Klal Yisrael, with such a wonderful history and such a tremendous, magnificent future, if we would plug into that, get rid of our egos and understand that there's nothing that I can do if it's me, but there's everything I can do if it's Hashem. So if you get, step aside and allow yourself to be a kli in Hashem's hands, as it were, then you can do anything.
Rav Shach came to Yehuda's. He was the sandik by my son Yehuda's bris. It was the first time he came into Eish HaTorah. And he took a look at all the guys in Eish HaTorah. He said, that guy's about tshuva? That guy's about tshuva? that guy's about tshuva, that guy's about tshuva. I said, yeah. So Rabboch went over to him and asked him, say a few words. Say a few words. So Rav Shach got up, an Eish Torah, and it's the first time I ever heard him say this, and I know that he's repeated it a number of times, but I don't think he ever said it before, but he was inspired. And he said this vote. He said, the Navi says, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecho. Shuva Yisrael, turn back, ad Hashem Elokecho. Ki koshalta ba'avonecho. You've stumbled in the avonis. So he asked, what does one thing have to do with another? Say, Shuva Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecho. What does it have to do? Ki koshalta ba'avonecho. So he answered, from the nichshel and avonis, you can tell what you can do in mitzvahs. And he said, my friends, he said these words. If one man can kill 6 million Jews, one man can save 6 million Jews. Do you hear that? This is Rav Shach speaking in Eish Torah. Yeah? I was still learning all the time, working in the summers, you know. And I was talking to people, what do we do, what do we do? And I even tried to make an organization, you know, nothing. I decided I'll go and ask the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish was known as the Gadol Hador, as a real leader of the generation. I talked to Ben Gurion, you know, he was the leader. So I figured I'll go and ask him, what do we do? I'll tell him this is what's happening. And what do we do? What should I do? What should anybody do? What you tell me, yeah? The only problem was that while I was on the ocean in the Mediterranean, I heard a newscast that the Chazon Ish died Friday night. So I am coming to Eretz Yisrael. The whole point of my coming was, I never dreamt that my coming to Eretz Yisrael was for anything else, yeah? Once I got here, you know, and the first night I slept in the Mir Yeshiva, you know, I went to sleep to learn. I got up in the morning. It was so full of joy, you can't tell you. So I decided I'm going to live in Eretz Yisrael.
People didn't know about Treblinka. That's what we asked. How come those houses that were outside were here? Well, they thought that, look behind you. We can't even see the bus anymore. Don't hear anything. Can't see anything around us. It's all these fir trees, which, if they could speak, would tell us so many secrets. These carriages arrived to this area over here. Franciszek Zabecki writes for us as follows. There were days where 2 or 3 trains stood at Treblinka station outside, the station that we didn't get to stop at, with their unfortunate cargo, waiting their turn to be sent to the death camp. The transport sometimes waited all night, but transfer to the camp was not carried out in the darkness. The cruelty of the security guards, the Germans, the Latvians, and the Ukrainians is difficult to describe. Sadism and torture seemed to know no bounds. I saw how guards who were always drunk would open the freight car doors at night and demand money and valuables. Then they would close the doors, and they would fire into the cars. During the day, the bodies remaining at the station were collected, loaded onto a car, and sent to the death camp. This task was attended to by a group of Jews from the camp under SS and Ukrainian supervision. The train moved slowly through a strange and sad countryside. A moment later, it came to a stop. The door would open noisily. The emptiness and the sadness of the sandy countryside disappeared. Within seconds, a strange fear seized us all. Get out, came the familiar shouts. People began to push. We held one another's hand and jumped down into the sand. Everyone went towards the wall of crowded pine trees. Suddenly I had a thought. These trees aren't growing. They're all dead.
They planned this, the deception. They planned it, they worked at it to kill us. They were united. They followed orders. They were disciplined. How to fool us. We believed them. That nothing's gonna happen. We believe them. Nothing's gonna happen. Now, what are we gonna do? Nobody's on our side, but what are we gonna do? Well, think about it. We're gonna work together? Are we gonna wake people up? How do we wake them up? What are we gonna do? What are we gonna think of? Yeah, you got 15 minutes. We talk about a Holocaust, we don't feel it. Anybody who's there, we gotta get it into our emotions, anybody there knows what the heck what they're planning for us. Yeah, we think, oh, man, they hate us. Yeah, what Ahmadinejad wants. You go there, you realize what's going on. Well, I decided I got to fight the spiritual Holocaust. There's nobody else going to do it, but I have to make the effort. Yeah, so I knew that you got to have an organization. So I started 5 different organizations with different principles. Yeah, they all flopped. They didn't go anywhere. Yeah, that's when I realized that the problem was apathy. Nobody believed it could be done. That was the real problem. People cared much more than they do today, but they didn't believe anything could be done. So I figured the only ones that know it can be done and that feel the necessity of it being done and that will commit themselves to a long-term, a life goal of getting it done, which is the core of an organization, are the people who become Bali Tshuva. The guys who come from the secular world and realize what the heck they were going through, a Holocaust, and they see that by learning they can wake up. They realize it can do it, and they know how necessary it is. So I figured they'll be the core of an organization that will succeed.
At the beginning of Aish HaTorah, there was one apartment. We had the same place that we studied, we ate, we slept, and that sense of very humble beginnings actually played a very important role in everyone's realization that they could build something from the ground up.
You know, there were altogether 5 fellas came with me to start Aish HaTorah. Only 5. For $1 million, we had to go down to the Kaisel, and every time you got to go to the Kaisel and back to the Kaisel. It wasn't very good, so we went for body count. Anybody that we could drag in. We wanted to get $1 million. But from the beginning, I told them, we're here to change the world. Yeah? And they would look around and say, who's he talking to? You know? So I would challenge them and say, look, you don't believe it can be done? If you're willing to sign up for 5 years, yeah, I will take you private and I'll show you it can be done. Yeah, but if you decide it can be done, you got to sign up. There's only one guy that I remember said, okay, you show me, I'll sign up. That was Rabbi Shalom Schwartz.
There was a sense that if you appreciated that the world was in trouble, that there were things that you needed, that you wanted to change in the world, then it made sense to devote your life with those that saw it the same way to making a difference. And here you had someone that had wisdom, had commitment, and he said that there was a way to make that difference that actually stemmed from our tradition as Jews, from our heritage. It wasn't a new idea. That was the power of it. It was an old idea, but it was the freshness of its commitment, the freshness of its touching you deeply on a personal level, that this heritage of a few thousand years old was being offered to you as a means of lifting the world, of bringing the world back to its own purpose, helping people to find themselves, helping yourself to fulfill that desire to make a difference, not simply because you're looking for meaning, but because there actually is some ultimate meaning to existence that's been given to you as an offering, as something that you can help create, help bring closer. And when it touched you, when you felt that sense of personal commitment to it, and when you were given the opportunity to actually do something about it, that combination was, for those of us that felt it, irresistible.
Rav Weinberg, he understood that, he's got this great model, he's got this great idea, he's going to create a Torah, he's going to create tremendous people, he's going to send them out to do Kiruv, and it's working, and it's fine. And then he says, oh, it's wonderful, there's only one problem, we're losing the war. It's a great system, and the guys are fabulous, and they're becoming leaders in their communities, and they got 4 continents and 26 cities, and each one of them has got success stories. The only problem left is that we're losing. Other than that, it was a great idea. So he says, Eis Lasses Lashem. I mean, if we wait around and just rely on the Rav Noach Weinbergs of the world, or the Yesha Torah people of the world, or the Yosameachs of the world, or the other great Kiruv organizations and partners in Torah and everything, we just rely on them, it'll just be nice ink, a couple of nice articles, nice memory, a few nefashos here and there. Each one's important, don't get me wrong, right? But once you see that the war is going to be long, long, long over before we can even fight it, so he says, we got to enlist. So then he brings it to the people like we're doing now and says, let's go.
We met an Israeli traveler, a 22-year-old kid that was traveling through, and he told one of the rabbis on the trip that he was studying World War II, not from a Jewish perspective, but from its impact on European society.
He was alienated from Judaism completely, yeah? And from the Jewish people. He was going out with a non-Jew, and he was planning to marry her, and he was traveling, it had nothing to do with Jews. He didn't join any Jewish group. He just was something to see. There were other things to see in Europe.
He went with us from Lublin to Majdanek, and at the end of Majdanek, when Rabbi Solomon told the story about his father, who was a Holocaust survivor, and we were there by the ashes, and he sang Kelmali Rachamim, to watch him completely fall apart, also dramatized and brought home, the enormity of the Holocaust and what had happened there in a way that you really felt it.
He didn't know what he was crying about, but that realization dawned on him that his soul was awakened. Yeah? He knew he was on the wrong path.
In 1942, the world knew about this place. They've got pictures about this place from 1942. There's a man called Jan Karski who fled from Poland, who told the world about what was going on, and that was in 1942. FDR Roosevelt, who decided not to allow the Jews who were fleeing to come into America at the time. And other people like him, and the Evian Conference, where Canada is quoted as saying, none is too many. And Australia quoted as saying, we do not have a refugee problem, and we're certainly not desirous of having one. And the British who said, we're not going to accept not one more Jew. The world was silent. That's all they did. They weren't responsible.
That's all they did.
I know that if I was there living at that time, I would want to be able to tell my grandchildren and my children that I tried my best to make a difference. Today, when the cries of pain are more subtle, I say to myself again, I want to be able to tell my children and my grandchildren, I was there, I saw it happening, and I took some action.
The only reason I started my first yeshiva or my first organization and all the subsequent was because I believed one thing, that if I come to a human father and I say, your son is drowning, I need your rope. Would you please give me your rope? The guy's going to give me his rope, yeah? Is that right? So I'm going to come to the Almighty and say, Almighty, I need you to help me. I want to save your children. Do you get that? That's the only reason I ever started. I didn't know what to do. How do you make money? How do you raise money? I mean, I never asked for money. Yeah. I figured the Almighty will help me. I didn't know how to make an organization. I'll try it. The Almighty has to help. He's got to help me. I'm going for His children. He's got to help us. We're going for His children.
Ultimately, Aish HaTorah and Rabbi Weinberg are not about Aish HaTorah and Rabbi Weinberg. The issue is the Jewish people. The issue is assimilation, and the issue is bringing back Klal Yisrael.
Looking back, how can we thank the Almighty for all these wonderful neshamas and for all of the kiruv? I mean, we get some reward for all of the kiruv being done all over the world. It's amazing. It's amazing. The Almighty has showered us with blessings. Yeah. But we're in trouble. We haven't even begun. We haven't even begun. If, God forbid, they were killing 100,000 Jews in the United States every year, everybody would know instantly, every Jew would know instantly, even secular Jews would know instantly what we got to do. We got to get an army, we got to get a defense force, we got to get weapons, we got to figure out where the enemy is, we got to figure out how to counter them. We know it immediately because blood. Yeah? We, religious Jews, we know this is worse, that there's no retreat. We got to win.